Right, so a second pro-Palestine British journalist has now been arrested under terrorism charges following the arrest and detention of Richard Medhurst last week, showing we're pretty much now living in a police state, where if you are against the Israeli genocide being meted out in Gaza and now being rolled out into the West Bank as well, where there is no Hamas, of course, and is tantamount to open warfare against an occupied territory, you now face a possible knock on the door for the boys in blue. Starmer was always going to be a rampant authoritarian. The warnings have been there and been voiced by independent journalists and political commentators for years now. He's a Zionist without qualification. If you aren't one as well, then what? You're going to be criminalised for it now? How many of us might be getting a knock on the door in the none too distant future then? Right, so do you reckon you might be on the security services list of wrong-uns in Keir Starmer's eyes now then? Do you reckon you've made the list? The counter-terrorism police, because it is terrorist legislation used to make these arrests, have you in a little black book or computer database equivalent? Do you reckon your posts on social media are being trolled to find dirt on you to excuse your possible, in none too distant future arrest? I made a similar point in my video on the arrest of Pavel Durov the other day. The biggest issue in my mind about his platform Telegram isn't so much the deviants that use the platform to plan and share their assorted depravities, because it isn't them the police are going after, is it? The bigger issue there is the security services don't actually have backdoor access to it. So the flow of information that Western interests might like to stop keeps on flowing. When we're now seeing arrests of those who would share that important and crucial information, the likes of Richard Medhurst, the likes of, in this case, Sarah Wilkinson, then it is a clampdown on that information which vested interests do not want shared. That mainstream media obediently ignores, of course, but that independent bloggers, vloggers, writers, scribblers, posters, whatever, certainly do post, because we deserve to know what is being done in our name with public money, and if we relied on just our politicians and mainstream media, we'd all probably be still thinking Israel are the heroes in all of this right now, because that's the preferred narrative, and certainly not the truthful one. We have an authoritarian running the country, though. We've seen how Starmer runs his party. We've watched that for years. He accepts no dissent, expects obedience and ardent loyalty only. And if you won't put up with that, then you're out. He told us where the door was when we didn't like it, didn't he? Now he's in power. Now he's running the country. There's no longer a door where we can walk away from that, so to speak. But if we dare to continue to speak out against his beloved Israel, no matter what they do, well, he's got the security services at his fingertips now. How far is he prepared to keep going with this? How far down this line will he go? How many more, like Medhurst and Wilkinson, will be silenced as the government seek to bury the crime of genocide with charges of terrorism against those speaking out against said genocide? So who is Sarah Wilkinson then, and what has happened to her? Well, Wilkinson writes for MENA Uncensored, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Uncensored news from the MENA region, MENA being Middle East and North Africa. She's avowedly pro-Palestinian, a human rights activist, very much calling out the Israeli occupation and genocide, and she tweets out content in line with this. Video content, articles, not just her own, but those of others too, through her substantial Twitter account. Some 291,000 followers as she has. But fundamentally doesn't do much that plenty of other people are not also doing with pro-Palestine, anti-Israel content either. What we're witnessing here is a war against press freedom. A war against freedom of speech and expression. A war against our right to know what the hell is going on in the world, what our government are doing in relation to that. When you boil it all down, it's an assault on democracy itself. If you've got nothing to hide, why are you prepared to arrest people in order to hide it? And in this case, when that comes down to a basic tenet like the truth, we should all be very, very alarmed by this. A reply put out in response to a tweet by Declassified UK's Matt Kennard from Jack Wilkinson, presumably a relative of Sarah's, is as much detail as we really have concerning her arrest at this point. It reads, "The police came to her house just before 7:30 a.m, 12 of them in total, some of them in plain clothes from the counter-terrorism police. They said she was under arrest for content that she has posted online. Her house is being raided and they have seized all her electronic devices. MENA Uncensored posted in the last hour at time of writing that she is in good spirits and has managed to meet with her lawyer. They have also published a statement dated from April as proof that Sarah Wilkinson is a news contributor at MENA Uncensored and has been since January 2024. Arrested for content she posted online, though? Like, what, that prompted an arrest? Social media posts showing video footage of Israeli atrocity, an interview with West Bank politician Mustafa Barghouti put out by Al Jazeera? Or is it that she dared show a video of Richard Medhurst being interviewed on Press TV, or indeed posts articles from that source too, an Iranian news outlet as that is? Is it the fact that they broadcast from Iran that is the issue, or is it more the fact they broadcast in English that is a bigger concern? God forbid we happen to understand what they're saying out there as well as what they're saying, because for as much as you can be sure it absolutely is Iranian state TV, you can be equally sure it's calling out Israel in no uncertain terms right now. Still only a news channel, though. It's an official news channel recognised in plenty of countries. It's not terrorism to watch it, is it? Whether you agree with the content of it or not, it's just a TV channel. Or is that genuinely all that sums up the case against Sarah Wilkinson? Honestly, if you're on Twitter, go to her account and see if you can find the terrorism she's been arrested for, allegedly. Because I couldn't find it. At @SWilkinsonBC. Look for it yourself. Now, if they decided sharing more Press TV clips or articles than the establishment approves of, or photos or videos of maimed individuals from Gaza counts as terrorism now, I struggle to see how they can justify it. I struggle to see how that would stand up in a court of law. Unless the common denominator is really the crime here. That exposing Israel's war crimes is now a crime itself in Starmer's Britain. If so, then Sarah Wilkinson might face up to 14 years behind bars for daring to inform you of things the powers that be don't like them doing. It'd be a rotten shame if people went to her account and started sharing loads of her posts, in which case, wouldn't it? I couldn't possibly advocate you do that. Don't do that, obviously. Don't, no. What we have here, though, is a social media account of a journalist sharing evidence of war crimes being committed against people in Palestine, in Gaza and the West Bank, now as that is. People who, under international law, are permitted to resist occupation, are perfectly entitled to resist their occupation. But if you show them doing that, then that counts as terrorism here in the UK. Apparently. So it seems to me at this minute. How many of us have been doing that for the past getting on for 11 months now, then, I wonder? How many of us might now be on a watch list as a result of that? Should I be waving to the screen and saying, "Hi, to whoever might be watching this? Have you got my dossier? Are you building a dossier on me, for instance, for the crime of being pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli genocide, and choosing to not just opine on that, but criticise the UK government and other governments too, for casting a blind eye as they have, and carrying on with arms sales to the regime, and continuing, of course, to take cash from the pro-Israel lobby? Is there a dossier on me on that? Surely that's the bigger crime, though, isn't it? Well, in the grand scheme of it, of course it is. Genocide is, of course, a bigger crime than terrorism. But when are they the ones ever held to account for such actions? And that's even less likely now, with Starmer being probably the most pro-security state Prime Minister we've ever had. Naturally, social media has come rallying to Wilkinson's side. Journalist and human rights activist Craig Murray wrote, "It seems the dynamic activist and journalist Sarah Wilkinson has now been arrested. I predicted Starmer would initiate a new wave of authoritarianism in the UK, and particularly aggressive state action against opponents of Starmer's beloved genocidal Zionist terrorist state. I am now literally waiting for the knock on the door." There'll be a few of us wondering about that, I expect, right now, Craig, but I suppose the more people were to share Sarah's post, the bigger that list would get. As I said, don't go sharing her posts, just don't. But how many are too many? Will we end up with an I am Spartacus situation in the end here? The massive War Monitor Twitter account, 1 million followers strong as that account has, posted, "Extremely worrying news coming from the UK this morning after a number of journalists who report on the ongoing genocide in Gaza were arrested and charged with supporting terrorism. Journalists reporting real-world events are not supporting or endorsing terrorism. This is a blatant attempt to silence those exposing Israeli war crimes." And Palestine Action followed in a similar vein, posting, "In one day, counter-terrorism police arrest actionist Sarah Wilkinson for posts online, re-raid one of the Filton 10's address, and charge actionist Richard Barnard for supporting a proscribed organisation. This is what you call a police state, one which is trying desperately to protect the interests of a foreign genocidal entity. We will not back down." And yes, Palestine Action co-founder Richard Barnard has also been arrested, facing 3 charges based on 2 speeches he gave after, it is claimed, a concerted effort by the Israel lobby. Fundamentally, we're running the risk of being nicked for daring to share an opinion on something establishment interests disagree with. If that isn't a dangerous precedent and a descent towards an undemocratic clampdown on our human rights to freedom of expression by just telling the truth, then I don't know what is. And of course, there is no escaping the fact that the UK government are themselves widely seen to be complicit in genocide too, an issue they are ending up in a bigger and bigger mess over, as this video recommendation will tell you all about. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.